Welcome back to our Meet the Pros interview series. After a short hiatus, we're back with episode 3. If you haven't seen the first two, you can check them out in our platform. In this episode, we speak with Robin Tomchin, who has worked in the arts across multiple sectors of the industry, getting her start in TV and theater before finding her place in the jazz world later on. She's been an agent, a manager, and worked in artist development for 4 decades. We hope you enjoy the episode. Well, welcome everybody to our third episode of our Meet the Pros interview series. Today we're talking with Robin Tomchin about artist management. But thank you, Robin, for joining us today.
Yeah, guys, thanks for including me. I appreciate it.
Robin, I was reading your bio, and something that I didn't know about you was that the beginning of your career in the talent agency management
Yeah,
world
yeah,
actually wasn't in jazz.
no,
So I'm curious if you can talk about
yeah,
your beginnings and also how you sort of entered into
yeah,
the jazz.
yeah. I'm very proud of my career. And I started working as an assistant to Lee Goober and Shelley Gross. Lee Goober and Shelley Gross were theatrical producers on Broadway, but owned Westbury Music Fair and Valley Forge Music Fair, which were theaters in the round. And at the time, there were like maybe 7 other theaters in the round in the United States. So we would consolidate and put shows together and then go to each of them, similar to what agents do now, and go to various venues that routing wise make sense. We monopolized certain territories that way. So I was in the programming department and I loved it. And I dealt with, at the time, there were only 3 talent agencies around. It was ICM, William Morris, and APA. Those were the 3 largest talent agencies. And I dealt with all of the agents in music, the music department, for years, and got very friendly with all of them. And, like anything else in this industry, it's all about networks and connections. And I was recruited by an agent at ICM to come work at ICM as an assistant in the music department. And at the time, the music department was contemporary music. So we had an R&B division and we had contemporary. And in that contemporary was James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Gordon Lightfoot, Victor Borga. It was a gamut of like everyone. Eddie Murphy was in that. So I was like honored to be like working with these major players and did that for many years, and then realized because I was a woman, they would never promote me. It was a tough time at that point for women. So I went to HR and I said, I think it's time for me to move and go back to what my original career was, which was the theater and film and television. And there was an opening working for a woman agent who was very well respected in the theater world. And I knew I had to work for her. I had to. And I said, look, I'm not after your job. I just want to work for you. I would be honored to do whatever it is you need me to do and help you. And she hired me. And her name was, unfortunately, she passed away. Her name was Sheila Robinson. And Sheila was the one who discovered Meryl Streep, Frank Langella, Joseph Papp from the Public Theater, loved her, and anyone in New York. I mean, the Public Theater is one of the most important theaters in New York, off Broadway and Broadway, because they were the ones that did Hamilton. And before that, it's just one of the most important theaters. And Joseph Papp was one of the most important producers ever. And he adored her. And I knew I had so much to learn from her, and I did. And 6 months later, so her job was, she was a television agent for television, film, and theater, and basically would represent ICM clients and try to get them gigs or put in those roles. So my job was to support her, but then she franchised me, which I became an agent, still working for her. And she gave me territories, like I handled all the soap operas that were coming out of the East Coast. I handled all the episodic television. And at that time, there was a lot. It was, I think, Miami Vice, The Equalizer, Spencer for Hire, which was filmed in Boston,
Mhm.
and all the talk shows. David Letterman had just come up, Arsenio Hall. I mean, so there were lots of like, so I was doing all of that. And I loved it. I loved it. And I did that for at least a good 10 years. And then she came to me and she said, I don't want to live in New York anymore. And I want to move to California. And I said, oh man, I don't want to live in California. So she left. And I knew then I was kind of out by myself. I didn't have anyone to really support me. And in that industry, you need support, especially when you're working at a large talent agency. It's all about numbers. So I had them buy me out of my contract. And then I left. But I loved it. And I hated to leave, but I didn't want to go to another agency. And my husband had just started his music management firm of jazz. Is he passed, but he was Kenny Burrell's son and managed the new jazz like the back of his hand. And so he said, well, you know what, why don't you take some time off and then come with me and let's start our business together. And he educated me on jazz. I didn't know anything about jazz, but I knew everything about the business and I knew how to negotiate and I knew how to get things done. And that's kind of how it started. But I remember one time I was at the Vanguard. Kenny Burrell was performing, and David and I were there to see him. And I was sitting next to this wonderful woman. And it turned out she was the promoter for the Guadalupe Jazz Festival. And her daughter was dating Stanley Jordan. And Stanley had just fired his manager. So he was looking for someone to kind of just help him. And she said, oh, and we started talking, we hit it off. And she said, oh, Robin, you need to meet Stanley. He needs you. And I said, oh, I love Stanley. Okay. Not knowing what I was really going to do. In my head, I was taking time off to just chill. But anyway, the next day I went to Stanley's house and hit it off with him. I mean, I love that guy. And before I knew it, I was helping him. And then before I knew it, then we started managing him. So it just kind of snowballed in a very organic, natural way.
That's beautiful. It,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
it makes me think of a promoter that I know that has a big festival who also comes from a non-jazz background. And I can see that he uses um, some of the things that he learned from a
Yeah,
non-jazz background to
yeah,
really bring a new perspective and elevate
yeah,
the world in a lot of ways. So I'm wondering
absolutely.
what are the types of things that you brought from your background in the theater and different types of agencies and how you applied those things in the jazz world and if they were really there in the before that.
No, they weren't. I can be honest with you that they weren't there before. And I'll give you an example. For an agent, as you guys know, um, and as a manager, you have to think outside the box. It isn't just the same line, everything. It isn't. You know, the market is competitive and you really have to like be creative. And so I got very creative at times with the record companies. I got creative with agents on what to do. But my real creativity came when I also then started working at Motema Music, which was when I left management because I got offered this really great position at Motema Music. And Motema was a small independent label that was based up in Harlem. And, you know, I was fortunate to work with some amazing people. And I did that for like 8 or 9 years.
What was that
Um,
position?
I was director of artist and business development. And I
Cool.
was also senior project manager. So when the label signed Joey Alexander, and at that point, I think he was 6 or 7, I was his project manager. So I went on the road with him and I put together the team of people, publicists, agents, that I thought would be right to really handle Joey in a very delicate way because he was so young,
Right.
and we really wanted to be so careful about not exploiting him. I mean, his talent is unbelievable, but he's still a child. So we needed to be careful about that. I remember the label released an album by Rufus Reid, and it was a beautiful record, beautiful record. And it was in tribute to Elizabeth Taylor, who was a very famous sculptor. And only rich people like Oprah Winfrey, Cosby, George Wein had her pieces in their house.
Yeah.
And the record, I knew like it was going to be tough to sell records in the jazz world, but it was a beautiful, beautiful record with a beautiful story, like a narrative. And I remember like one night just thinking, okay, brainstorming, what can I do? Because budget was not a lot. I didn't have a big marketing budget, but what could I do that could really help lift this record and bring awareness to it? And I called a friend of mine who's a radio producer, Jim Luce, and I told him about the project. And I said, Jim, could we create our own radio show? And we were coming into February, so Black History Month. And I thought, oh my God, how about if I create a free program for Black radio and they play it for the whole month of February free to help promote the record? And I got the approval from, everyone at Motema, and Rufus was thrilled. But then I said, but I need a celebrity or a name that can talk about Elizabeth, her work and who she was. And then I remembered seeing the Glory was the statue. And George, after his wife died, ended up dating Glory. She is a very famous dancer. And I remembered this. So I called George's office and I asked them if there was any way we could interview George and Glory with Rufus at George's office. And somehow they agreed. It was, I mean, when things fall in place, you're like, wow, we did it. And it didn't cost Motema a lot of money. And it got great publicity for Rufus, who never had that much publicity on a record. And he got 2 Grammy nominations. So it was, it was a proud, very, very proud moment. Very proud moment. So it's kind of things like that you do, that you're creative. I mean, management, it's like all about placing. When I managed Danilo Perez, nobody knew who Danilo was. Nobody knew him. And I remember saying to him, Puppy, who is it that you want to work with? And just give me a list of musicians. And, of course, it was Elvis Jones and like the greats. And I said, okay, all right, we'll get there. Eventually, we'll get there. And it took years, but we got there, years to get there. And I was very fortunate because every artist that I ever signed, I was a fan first and I believed in them 110%. And I fought for them 110%, and I mean fought, because that's just what a manager does, but what I also have learned is what worked to their advantage to every artist that I ever had was all my connections. And my connections are vast, and they're not just jazz. They're all over. Their music, their TV, their production, their film, there's books, it's everything, magazines, it's just fashion. I mean, now there's no budget to bring in a stylist unless you're, of course, Samaro or, people that are bringing in money, but I was the stylist for all the artists, and fortunately I have friends in the fashion world that I would be able to consult with, not having to pay them, and get ideas, or go to stores and be able to borrow clothes. You can't do that now, but that's the beauty of the business, to be able to use your connections and make connections that last forever. My friendship with Catherine is 35 years of us working together,
Mhm.
and being friends and trusting each other. That's my relationships with pretty much almost every promoter I've ever dealt with, and my reputation is good. People are going to say it might be tough because I'm fighting for my artist, but they're not going to say anything negative, because it's just all in the nature of the business and how you approach it.
I really like how you are using connections that are outside of the jazz world, because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of what's taught in universities, a lot of like formation programs of jazz musicians don't really focus on outside of the bubble of what's the jazz world. So
No, no, Matt, they absolutely do not. And here's another thing they don't focus on. They don't focus on, a musician must understand every single aspect of their business. Every single one of my clients, with the exception of Danilo, every other client signed their contracts. All the monies from the agencies went into their account, not my account. I wanted them to be accountable and understand every aspect of the business, including publishing, royalties, everything. You know, I hooked them up with my lawyers or my, various things, but it was their responsibility to be the president of their corporation, because it's their corporation. So I stopped paying musicians. I was like, nope, you're going to pay your musicians. You're going to, at the end of the year, get your stuff together to file for your accounts. I'll help you, but this is your business.
hmm.
It's not my business. I have my own business and I take care of it. You
Mhm.
need to know this. And that they don't teach that. And they don't teach, the other thing they don't teach, which sometimes really upsets me, is respect for your elders and knowledge for your elders. And no, you might think you're a badass, and you might very well be, but that's not enough anymore. You need to know and be educated about jazz and the history of jazz and where it came from, and what our ancestors had to do for the music. That is so important to me. And educating is really important. And I was fortunate because all of my clients always felt the same way that I felt, that education is really important. And we would always do master classes and clinics, even if they didn't get paid. It didn't matter. Didn't matter. They were on a mission and they had to teach. If you want to keep our music alive, you've got to know where it comes from, and you've got to set the record straight so that younger kids get more involved. When Danilo and I started the festival in Panama, the Republic of Panama, I thought he was nuts. I thought we were nuts to put a festival, a jazz festival, together in the Republic of Panama, where nobody knew jazz. It was merengue, and then, salsa and Ruben Blades, and that's cool. But I said, Danilo, we've got to have a narrative. And the narrative was so simple. We wanted to educate Panamanians so that they could do these jobs. I brought, the first few years of the festival, I brought road manager, sound crew, all that stuff from the United States, but it was to educate Panamanians so
Mhm.
that they could have a handle on this festival, and then open it up to South and Latin American students, and really make it a mission of like educating and teaching and inviting New England Conservatory and inviting Berkeley School of Music, and have these children audition. I'm very proud of that festival, and I'm no longer involved in it, but I'm very, very proud of Danilo and the hard work that he and Patty, his wife, have done, because they've really, I think it's going on 20 years, and they've really done an amazing job where a lot of the students have received presidential scholarships at Berkeley. And that has nothing to do with the festival and all to do with the talent and Berkeley or NEC providing that. We just gave them the way to get in, but they had to prove their talent, and so I'm very, very proud of that.
And it goes to show, because now the festival is almost completely Panamanian run.
Yeah.
Is really beautiful. So
It's beautiful. And that was always the mission, to be able to do that. So I'm very, very proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sets up a sustainable way for the business to continue to exist.
Exactly.
It's the same way that you spoke about dealing with your artists, where you're nurturing and teaching them how to do a lot of the business and technical things themselves.
Yeah.
It sets them up properly.
I mean, it was so funny because the 8 years that I was at Motema, and I was overseeing all of the artists, and a lot of the artists at Motema Sign didn't have agents, didn't have managers. So part of my job was figure out how I can connect them to agents and managers, and then bring that to a level where an agent or a manager would want them realistically, that thought they were viable to tour and stuff. And there was a lot of great stuff that came out of that for them, but it was a lot of hard work for me and my associates at Motema. But, I'm very proud of the work we did at Motema. And I say we because it was a joint effort, not just me, because we made it it was a very strong independent label and mighty, and like just roared with like the talent of people that we had on that label, and unfortunately, the epidemic came and that changed everything for the world. And, the label is still happening, and Jana has it on a much smaller scale, which I understand, but it was pretty mighty in its heyday. And I was very proud, to be a part of it. And all the great work that we did for a lot of the great artists. But that was also another way of being creative, with being a director of artists in business. I literally would, I say, okay, how can I get Motema's name out there as well as our artist? And, I would have conversations with Tim Jackson at the time at Monterey and say, Tim, I want to buy the garden stage one night at the festival. Can we do it at a rate? And negotiate with him. And yeah, we did that one year. And then Exit Zero Jazz Festival in Cape May, New Jersey, which is a beautiful little festival that Michael Klein, not little, excuse me, a beautiful festival that Michael Klein produces and twice a year. And I love this festival. And I went to Michael and I said, could Motema be a co-sponsor? And we worked it out for years and with that sponsorship, then we were able to get Motema a certain amount of artist gigs for the festival. So there were ways to do it that worked really, really well. And you could be creative like that. And the same for Europe at the time, for Ronnie Scott's or, Pizza Express, there were ways you could be creative. Times have changed. It's different now. And touring's changed. It's much different for artists, but, you just got to keep getting out there and just doing what you do and believe in yourself and create. But, it's not just enough to just put your music out there. You've got to have some smart marketing ideas and smart people behind you. I haven't thought about this in a long time. And I was thinking about it last night saying, oh, there's so much that I could talk about of all these different aspects of my life in this business.
Mm-hmm.
But, it just starts with passion. And it's the reason, listen, none of us are doing this because we want to get rich. That's not it at all. We do it because we love what we do. I love the music. I love my peers. I love working with Catherine. I love working with the associates that I know, and the bond when you go to Jazz Congress, and you guys will see, it's a love fest. And it's not just with the artists. I'm talking like with agents, with managers, with publicists. I mean, when I see you guys at Jazz Congress, or, Unity, or Global Fest, or, you know, just a special community. And it's all because we've all reached out and made it a special bond, you know?
Yeah, I think those ties are what make it work. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that in itself is a really important point for any artist aspiring to take it to the next level in the industry, to realize that it's a reciprocal thing. It's
absolutely.
about respect and appreciation. And that's something that we do try to teach to students in the course, is that when you go to approach a promoter, you're not just trying to sell yourself, you're trying to build a bond. And so I think it's important that you
100%. And do you know, I do this for my clients, pretty much thank promoters after the gigs. If I'm not with the artist on the road, I'll send them an email and thank them on behalf of the artist. No artist does that. No artist does that, but it goes a long way. I'm not saying bombard promoters. I'm not saying that at all. And you know what? There are times when maybe business wasn't good, and that's a reality too. And it could be frustrating because they're not, doing their part on social media, and they expect an artist to do more on their social media. But the point is, there's always ways to address that. And it's still a thank you, or next time business is going to be better. I swear I really feel business is going to be better. There's ways to approach people that leave a lasting impression. And that's really important. Because in the bigger picture, I mean, I won't be here, but you're going to still be there. So how are they going to remember you? What are you doing to put yourself out there other than, okay, you're a badass, great. But what else? What else are you doing? You know, Again, it isn't about just getting up there and performing. That's just a big part of it, of course, but that's not the only part at all. And that's what they don't teach musicians, you know. And I think I have with my former clients, I think they have a better understanding of their business and what they want, what they don't want. But then they also have to be realistic with, really, this is the nature of the business now. It changes.
Hmm.
It certainly changed from 10 years ago to now, and it'll change next year too. But you just have to stay afloat, stay positive, and just get up there and pick yourselves up and just do it if this is what you want.
what
It
are
sounds
some
like you take a
oh,
very mentorship approach to managing artists,
Yeah,
whereas I've heard and experienced in some cases, like some artists expect you to do everything for them. So I think it's really great that you are empowering instead of just like doing it.
totally.
Yeah, yeah,
Totally.
just
But realistically, not every artist, like there were certain artists where I had to do everything for them. And that's okay. That's who they are. But I would say the 90% of the other artists that I managed, no, they did it. They knew, they took responsibility. I helped guide them. And that's really what a manager is supposed to do, guide. You know, Ultimately, I can give you my suggestions, but you're going to make the final decision. It's your career, it's your livelihood. And I'll disagree with you, but ultimately, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do.
it sounds great to be able to have disagreements, but also
Yeah.
maintain this level of respect. Just like
Yeah.
it comes from like wanting to work as a team.
Yeah. That's really important. I,
Mm.
I can't not work have a team player. The business is too hard. It's too difficult, where I can't get up and start fighting every day with you when I've got so much fighting to do with the business itself. That
Yeah.
doesn't work for me anymore. Not at this point in my life. I don't have to, you know. And I want that person to be grateful and feel like Just like I have their back, they need to have my back.
Mm.
It's a two-way street. I mean, I need to know you're loyal to me, just as I'm loyal to you. In a sense, it's almost like a marriage, you
Yeah, that's
know?
what I'm thinking. It's like a romantic relationship,
Yeah, that's right.
which
Exactly.
has come up in other interviews that we've done with different people in the industry. It's like, wow, this sounds like relationship therapy almost. Like,
It is. It
yeah.
it absolutely 100% is. 100%. There are days I'm a shrink, and there are days I'm like a mother, and you take on many roles as a manager,
Mm.
many roles, you know, and it's okay because you don't mind doing it because it's someone you believe in, and you hope that they would do the same for you,
Mm. Yeah.
you know?
Do you think that that belief in the artist is 100% necessary to
Yes.
do the work?
I could never work any other way,
Mm.
ever. And believe me, I've worked with a lot of even R&B artists, and I made a lot of money, more so than in jazz. But it was because I knew they were so amazing that
Mm.
I had to. I had to. And it might not have lasted years like my jazz relationships, but I had to. So yeah, I can't take someone on that I'm not a fan of and I don't believe in. It's very difficult for me to do that. And
Yeah.
I think with jazz, most managers, seasoned professional managers I'm talking about, would feel the same way. How
Mm.
Mm.
can we? How can we get up every day and fight unless we really believe in you? Fight meaning fight the fight, not fight, argue, but
Yeah.
fight for the business.
Mm.
Fight for your career, fight for what you want. Because when I start working with an artist, the first thing I'll do is I want to hear from them. What do they want? What are their career goals? What do they want from me?
Mm.
And how can I help them achieve that? And it could be whatever outside the box. I don't care, because then that gets my creative juices flowing. And it could be who they want to play with. It could be specific type of shows. It could be, the world is open to the possibilities, but I need to get their creative juices flowing. And it isn't, oh, I just want to play the Vanguard. Really? That's your goal? Okay. What else? Who else? With
Mm.
who? Give me names, and then we could take it to the next level if need be, you know. But it has to be something creative where I really feel, wow, I really in my heart feel like I can help this person. Really do. And that's what gets my heart beating, because it's certainly, as I said, not the money. It's because, wow, I really do feel I can make a difference for this person.
Mm.
Our viewership, I would say, is like, it's increasingly more people that aren't necessarily musicians that want to make a living out of performing, but
Oh,
also
good.
people that want to start getting into managing others and being an agent, and that kind of the other side of the business.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what kind of tips you would have for those people who aren't like musicians but want to go into the business to work with creative people.
Oh, good question. Well, listen, I was an agent. I was never a manager.
Mm.
So it comes from truly believing in that person and really feeling you can make a difference.
Mm.
And even if you don't know, you just step outside that box, that comfort zone, and try. You just have to try, and if you don't succeed, you pick yourself up and go another way. I never gave up. I never, ever, ever gave up on my artist. And believe me, I'm sure there were plenty of days that I felt like I was up against a brick wall.
Mm.
But then the next day I would get up and I'd be like, okay, new day, curtain up, act one, here we go. And I just would literally knock down those walls slowly by slowly, but not in an aggressive way, in a nice way, to really make something happen.
Mm.
And it worked for me. You
What
know,
kept
I'm not afraid to get on the phone. I'm not afraid to call people. I'm not afraid, you can't have a fear of like, because you're doing it on behalf of an artist you believe in. And that's much bigger than anything else because you really feel in your heart that they could move to that next level. They could be, an important figure in jazz or music. I'm not just saying jazz, it could be music or theater or film or television. I remember when I was at ICM, um, David Allen Greer was a client, and we used to get a lot of stuff for him for Broadway and episodic and stuff. And one day he came to me and he said, Robin, I really think I'm funny. I said, oh, okay. He said, could you get me a gig at Catch a Rising Star? And I was like, sure. So Catch a Rising Star, to be honest, I don't even know if it's still anymore, was one of the most important comedy clubs in New York. And I remember calling the venue and I said, look, I'm an agent at ICM and I would like a spot for my client. And I would like 9 o'clock spot. I just said, shit, why don't I ask for a good time slot? Don't give me 5 o'clock or don't give me 1 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, long story short, they did. And I think David had like a week to prep. And I got everyone from ICM to come because we wanted to support him. And honestly, he was hysterical. He was hysterical. We didn't even know, nor did he, that he had this in him. And right after that, he got In Living Color because he was so funny that the agent saw him and submitted him. So you never know. You never know. If you keep your arms open to possibilities and just try, it's incredible what could happen, And I mean, I just gave David Allen Greer the opportunity. I didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? Other than get him a spot on, a comedy show and in hopes that he was funny. He did it all. So I helped him. I gave him that step, but he did it all himself. And I'm super proud of him on that. So it's stuff like that an agent and manager does that, you can't ever not remember those kinds of stuff. I'll give you another example, and this one was wild. I got a call from a casting director who did Miami Vice. Now, Miami Vice was a very big show with Don Johnson and I forgot the other actor, but it was a big, big show out of Miami, and how it was like fashion wise, it was big, big show. And they came to me and they said, Robin, we have a spot. We're looking for an albino to play this drug dealer. And I was like, drug dealer, albino? All right, let me get back to you. So I went to the music department. We had just signed Miles. This was when I was at ICM. We had just signed Miles Davis. And I was like, oh my God, Miles would be an amazing on Miami Vice. It was his kind of show. It was hip dressing. And so I went to the agent and I said, I got something far-fetched. And I have no idea if Michael Mann, the director, would be interested, but I can't imagine him not. Anyway, long story short, the agent went to Miles's manager and Miles was like thrilled to do this. I went back to the casting director and I said, sit down, I have a great idea that's out of the pocket. And they went ballistic and loved it. And Miles did it. And he was amazing in it, and I think the salary he got paid for the clothes he took for wardrobe. I don't know. It was so funny. But it was stuff like that, you don't know, always get those kind of opportunities like, like you did. It was fun.
Right. You have to kind of you made that opopportunity yourself,
Exactly.
because you were
Exactly.
willing to have the idea and pitch it to the right people.
Exactly. Exactly. And like for an example, I mean, I remember Danilo always wanted to play with Elvis Jones, always. And I remember weekly calls to Elvis's manager, and she didn't know who Danilo was. And I said, that's okay. You will know who Danilo is. And I would send at the time, it wasn't email at the time. So I would send clippings, or I would mail CDs, or, New York Times front page, articles, or, and then eventually, we broke it down, and people, look, then he became part of the Wayne Shorter Quartet that we never thought that would happen, and that made history. So you never know. You just keep trying and trying and trying.
Surrounding yourself with, like you said, respecting your elders too, because or people that have been in the business longer than you have. I remember lessons that I've learned from you, Robin. Like the first month that I started working with Catherine, one of my first projects was that festival that we worked on. I won't say names because this is being recorded, but
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely learned a lot of very valuable lessons about, like you said, picking up the phone,
Yeah.
the putting on the theatrics of not aggression, but
No,
direct.
exactly. Sometimes, and here's the other thing. It's like, oh, this kills me. Pick up a phone. Pick up a phone, people. People don't pick up a phone anymore. Everything is email or text. And it's like, for people my age, sometimes picking up a phone is a lot more impressive and important than just shooting me another email or a text. I can get that done in 2 minutes, picking up a phone call and having a conversation, as opposed to shooting an email back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah,
that's
a curve. That's
people don't do that.
Yeah.
They really don't, and it's so important. Yeah, Matt, that was I was glad to help you, and I was grateful for your help in making that work, because it's not easy. And I also think that musicians really don't understand how difficult management is, how difficult being an agent is. They don't have a clue what we go through, what our day is, sleepless nights, how I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I'm dealing with Europe. They don't realize that, nor should they, I guess, because that's not their job. That's what I guess they're paying us for. But sometimes you have to let them know, wait a minute, I'm working 7 days a week. While you're on tour, I'm on tour. I mean, I might not be on the road with you, but I'm here. I'm in my office. But they don't realize how hard we work. And again, it's not for the money, because it's not. It's not like we're all making a lot of money. We're not.
Well, this has been really amazing, Robin. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for making this happen. And I hope it helps people. I hope, it reaches people, that it helps to understand the nature of the business. And it's just so many parts of this business to understand, that it's not an easy business. And you're not doing this by yourself. There's a team of people that are helping you, and you have to understand and be grateful for that team of people. So I'm grateful.
And just a reminder for any listeners that Robin is one of our pros on our platform, and you can book sessions with her. But as always, we suggest that you do your research first. You take the course if you can, you have all your materials ready, you know where you want to go, what your goals are. And that way, when you do have the conversation, you can meet on that equal level and collaborate instead of just pitching.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to it. I hope I get a chance to speak to a few people and hopefully make a difference for them.